Imagine a simple metal box costing $150, equipped with a fan and a small water pump, capable of lowering a room's temperature by 30 degrees Fahrenheit. No compressor humming away, no chemical refrigerants, no complicated machinery, just the straightforward magic of water evaporating from a wet surface. The very same principle your body uses when you sweat to shed heat. Compare that to a central air conditioning system tackling the identical space. It consumes 14 times the electricity. Installation, $5,000. Lifespan, 15 years. For decades, households across America's desert regions relied on this humble, inexpensive solution. Then, one day, the pricier option replaced it. Not because it delivered superior cooling, but because it could be sold, maintained, and billed monthly. Today, the original device still exists, quietly sitting on store shelves, mostly forgotten by anyone under 40. It is called an evaporative cooler, out west, often referred to as a swamp cooler. Its disappearance has little to do with performance. The science behind this is ancient, older than written history. Around 2500 BC, Egyptians discovered it. Servants would fan air across clay vessels filled with water. As air passed over the wet surfaces, heat was drawn away, leaving cooler air to circulate. In Persia, architects designed wind towers, channeling scorching air through underground ducts where it flowed over water, dropping 20 to 30 degrees before reaching living spaces. In India, wet grass mats called ku curtains were hung over doorways. Civilizations confronting extreme heat independently arrived at the same solution. Evaporation extracts heat from the air. This is no mere theory. It is a process tested over millennia. Modern evaporative coolers follow the same basic design. Hot outdoor air is drawn through pads drenched in water. As the air travels across these surfaces, the water evaporates, removing heat in the process. According to the Department of Energy, such systems can lower temperatures by 15 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on local climate. There's no chemical cycle, just a fan, a modest pump circulating water over the pads, and physics at work. Surprisingly, the air produced is not recirculated. It is fresh outdoor air, cooled and pushed into the home. Windows remain cracked open to allow airflow, and the entire interior air volume is refreshed every few minutes. Central air conditioning, by contrast, seals the house, recycling the same stale air through the system repeatedly. Anyone who has spent hours in a sealed air-conditioned room, feeling dryness, headaches, and that flat staleness, knows the difference. The swamp cooler avoids that. It breathes. Its effectiveness hinges on climate. In dry regions, water evaporates rapidly, drawing substantial heat from the air. In humid areas, evaporation slows, diminishing the cooling effect. That limitation is real and crucial to understand, but the numbers reveal why it matters. The University of Arizona conducted a study on a 2,000 square foot home in Tucson comparing the two systems. The evaporative cooler consumed only 250 kilowatt hours of electricity per month, while the central air conditioner required 850. That's the same home, the same summer, with a 70% reduction in electricity usage. Look at the power draw itself. The cooler runs on about 250 watts, while a central air compressor pulls 3,500 watts, roughly 14 times more. Financially, the gap is just as stark. Running the cooler for the summer costs around $150 in electricity, plus roughly $54 for water. The central system, $600 for electricity alone. Over the long term, that's a saving of roughly $400 every year. Installation costs mirror this disparity. A conventional central air system ranges from $3,800 to $7,500. A rooftop whole-house evaporative cooler, meanwhile, costs between $500 and $1,500. Even a window-mounted unit, enough to cool a single room or section of a house, runs just $150 to $400 and plugs into a standard outlet. No specialized license, no complex refrigerant lines, no permits required. These statistics are not fringe claims. They align with Department of Energy findings. Evaporative coolers use about 1/4 the energy of traditional air conditioning and generally cost half as much to install. This trail of evidence leads to an unexpected revelation. This is not a new invention waiting to be discovered. It is, in fact, a centuries-old technology around which entire communities were once built and then abandoned. In 1908, Oscar Palmer in Phoenix, Arizona, crafted the first commercial evaporative cooler. Within 25 years, homemade versions appeared across the Southwest. Wet burlap stretched over window frames, damp sheets hung in front of electric fans. The principle endured, quietly effective, until economic forces and marketing persuaded a generation to forget it. By 1939, nearly every home and business across the southwestern United States relied on some version of evaporative cooling. Phoenix alone boasted over 30 companies producing these units by 1940, earning the city the nickname the air conditioning capital of the world. And they weren't referring to compressors. This was the original form of cooling, and for decades it sufficed. It made life in the harsh desert climate bearable at a price that ordinary families could manage. Then, Willis Carrier's mechanical refrigerant air conditioner began to gain traction. Although he patented his invention back in 1902, it had remained largely commercial for 50 years, cooling movie theaters, department stores, and factories. The residential window unit did not appear until the late 1940s, and central air for private homes began arriving only in the mid-1950s. Even then, adoption was gradual. By 1960, only a quarter of Phoenix households had switched to refrigerated air, leaving 3 out of 4 still using evaporative coolers. 2 major shifts occurred simultaneously. In 1965, a construction strike halted new housing projects in Phoenix. Builders turned to retrofitting existing homes, and the favored upgrade was replacing swamp coolers with refrigerated air. At the same time, cheap post-war electricity, GI Bill financing, and the suburban expansion created a housing model built around ducts and compressors. Developers mass-producing tract homes weren't installing swamp coolers, they were installing central air. Despite higher costs and greater energy consumption, this system could be mass-manufactured, financed, serviced, and installed month after month for the lifetime of the house. By 1980, the swamp cooler had moved from being standard to relic status. Today, only roughly 7% of Phoenix homes still use one. The rest endure quadruple the operating costs for the same comfort under identical climate conditions. The story doesn't stop with economics. Early evaporative coolers used aspenwood fiber pads. Neglecting proper cleaning led to rot. Algae proliferated in the reservoir. Bugs found their way inside. The unit often developed a marsh-like smell that led to the name swamp cooler, which stuck. Consider marketing. Trying to sell a homeowner a swamp cooler while its competitor is called air conditioning is a challenge. One sounds modern, the other evokes a problem under the porch. This simple naming issue caused more harm to the technology than any rival ever could. It's essential to be upfront. Evaporative coolers don't perform equally well everywhere. That isn't a minor caveat. It is the technology's defining limitation. In Phoenix's deep desert summers, at 10% humidity, expect a temperature drop of 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. At 20% humidity, cooling ranges between 20 and 25 degrees. At 40% humidity, roughly 15 degrees. Still significant, still far more economical than conventional air conditioning. But once humidity exceeds 50%, returns diminish sharply. Beyond 60%, the effect is almost negligible. In cities like Houston, Miami, Atlanta, and much of the eastern United States, where summer humidity ranges from 60 to 80%, this box will not cool. It will only add moisture. That is physics, and it explains why most of America switched to refrigerant air systems. Yet that framing misses the point. Western and mountain states, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, California's Central Valley, western Texas, and parts of Montana and Wyoming exist in precisely the climate this technology was designed for. Tens of millions of people live there, many paying $600 per summer to run a compressor, when a simple box costing a fraction could accomplish the same cooling for $24. The device works perfectly. It's the surrounding system that moved on. No conspiracy suppressed this technology. Evaporative coolers remain on store shelves today. You can order one online tonight. The Department of Energy endorses them. This is not a banned product or a hidden patent. What happened is subtler and more entrenched. The entire HVAC ecosystem, contractors, supply chains, building codes, reorganized around the compressor. The U.S. HVAC market generates over $30 billion annually. 88% of American homes have air conditioning. Contractor certifications revolve around refrigerant handling. Financing models accommodate installations costing $5,000 to $15,000. A swamp cooler has no service contract, no refrigerant to recharge, no annual tune-up generating a $200 bill. Replacement pads cost $20, swapped by the homeowner each season. If the pump fails, a new one costs $30. End of summer maintenance is simple. Drain the reservoir, wipe down the housing, and let it dry in the driveway for 20 minutes. Think about it. Every spring, a technician charges $150 to $300 just to inspect your central air system, check refrigerant levels, and hose off the condenser. That's before the compressor cycles even start. Meanwhile, a contractor pointing out a $150 evaporative cooler is effectively wiping out a $5,000 installation bill. This isn't a conspiracy. It's basic arithmetic that nobody in the sales chain has an incentive to solve for you. There's another clever move the air conditioning industry pulled that rarely gets discussed. They redefined a word. Air conditioning used to mean any system that modifies the air, heating, cooling, filtering, humidifying. In the American Southwest, the original air conditioners were evaporative, and that's what the term meant. Over time, the refrigerant-based industry co-opted the phrase, making it synonymous with compressors, sealed boxes, and $5,000 price tags. The swamp cooler was linguistically pushed out of its own category. No one orchestrated it deliberately. It simply happened when one side had a marketing budget, and the other side was a metal box with wet pads. So, what does owning one look like today? A portable evaporative cooler, the type you roll from room to room, costs between $100 and $250. Fill its reservoir with water, plug it in, and direct airflow where you want cooler air. Monthly operating expenses hover around $20 to $30. No installation, no permit, no technician required. A window-mounted unit, capable of cooling an entire room or section of a house, ranges from $150 to $400. It installs like a standard window AC, but is lighter, simpler, and requires no refrigerant lines. You can connect it to a garden hose for continuous water supply or fill the reservoir manually. These units move substantial volumes of air, 3,000 to 5,000 cubic feet per minute. Crack a window on the opposite side to provide an outlet, and the space completely refreshes with cooled air every few minutes. A whole house system, rooftop mounted and ducted through ceilings, costs $500 to $1,500 installed. That is the exact setup that cooled Phoenix homes for 40 years. It's still available, it still works, and it still costs a fraction of central air. In climates that alternate between dry and humid periods, you don't have to compromise. Use the evaporative cooler during dry months for maximum efficiency and electricity savings. Switch to central air when monsoons arrive or humidity exceeds 50%. Some Arizona households have operated both systems for decades. The cooler handles the long dry stretches, the AC takes on humid weeks. Annual cooling costs drop roughly 50% compared to using AC alone. This isn't a workaround, it's the intelligent way to manage a home in mixed climates. Yet almost nobody implements it because the HVAC industry earns nothing from recommending dual systems. Turn it on a June afternoon when the temperature hits 103 degrees Fahrenheit and the air is bone dry. The fan hums, the pump circulates water over the pads, and within minutes the air entering the room is pleasantly cool. Not the harsh, dry cold of refrigerant-based AC, something softer, gentler, like standing by a lake with a breeze over the water. The air carries a faintly clean scent, fresh, not recirculated or passed through ducts for the 10th time that day. Your electricity meter barely budges. No compressor cycles, no condenser dumping heat into the backyard, just water performing its timeless work, drawing heat from the air as it evaporates. Here's what keeps me returning to this point. The fastest warming regions are exactly the ones this technology was designed for. Western deserts, low humidity areas where electricity demand spikes every summer. The Department of Energy forecasts global cooling demand to triple by 2050. And the solution most people pursue, the compressor, refrigerant, sealed system, consumes the most energy and emits the most waste heat. Every air conditioning unit in Phoenix dumps heat back into the surrounding air, making the city hotter and forcing neighboring units to work harder. It's a feedback loop that worsens with adoption. Evaporative coolers, by contrast, do not add heat, they consume it. Energy is used to transform water from liquid to vapor and does not return to the environment as extra heat. Refrigerant leaks from AC units release hydrofluorocarbons, greenhouse gases hundreds of times more potent than carbon dioxide. The swamp cooler's working fluid is just water. One system exacerbates the problem it solves, the other does not. 118 years ago, a man in Phoenix built a simple box with wet pads and a fan, making the desert livable. That invention remains on store shelves today. The physics has not changed. The cost has barely shifted. The only thing that has changed is our definition of air conditioning and who profits from it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.